Shadow Chaser in the center, basically the Monster Hunter, has on his jacket a patch of a gray patch with a black dragon on it. And I actually came across, we had those patches made.
Yep.
That was a giveaway
I still have one
at
somewhere.
Conventions. And I came across it the other day and I said, oh, now I remember what this is. So.
I forgot about that.
I think a lot of people don't pay a lot of attention to gamers out there necessarily, but when you're working on books, it's a big concern and something you spend a lot of time on. And that's the art and layout and how it influences sometimes the way that the game is put together. And I think D20 Modern really struck some kind of new and interesting directions. It has a little bit of a minimalist design, kind of 4-color, a little bit comic style, but also not as kind of like outrageous and flashy as a lot of fantasy art tends to be, or science fiction. It's a little more subdued in its tone. And also the layout in the book, I actually think is pretty brilliant. It has some kind of interesting innovations. So maybe, Bill, you could start off this topic and tell us a little bit about the thought process that went into that.
I have an art background, so I like to think, I think visually as well as with the words. So even when I'm writing rules, I'm setting it up in a layout of some sort just for my own edification. Then I work with the art director. In this case, it was Rob Raper was our art director for this. Did some brilliant work. We talked about it a lot. He certainly had an aesthetic he wanted to go for, which was the comic art aesthetic. Closer to the graphic novel type of art than regular comic book 4-color work, right? And we agreed with that. I thought that was a great approach. And then beyond that, you want to make sure it's easy to read and to find stuff, right? That's really the ultimate goal of any design. And it kind of just worked from there. And between myself, Rob, the typesetter, and everybody else who was on the team, the editors contribute to that as well. And eventually we get something that we like that looks good, and then we go from there.
I seem to remember we went through a number of different layout presentations. What do you think of this? What do you think of this? What do you think of this color combination? And the end result was really excellent. In particular, the fact that basically we gave variety to the pages. We gave a look and feel that felt very dynamic. I particularly like, you have a lot of tables in our games, in particular 3rd edition. And and basically putting them in a way that they would pop and be available without necessarily dominating the pages they're on was really, really very nice. Nicely done.
That wasn't unique to this book. I mean, that's how the art department worked on every product we did at Wizards, especially core books, where you're establishing a look for a line that's going to go on, hopefully, for multiple books thereafter.
Attention, I think, in all, particularly core books, rule-heavy books, where, are you creating a manual by which people learn a game, which implies sort of a sequential reading of it or something close to it, or are you creating a reference book where people go to look stuff up? They want to find things about a particular ability or spell or whatever it is. And those two things drive very different layout priorities. And that tension exists, as Bill says, it's not just about D20 Modern. It's about all of role-playing game books, I would say generally, but certainly in the books that we were producing in R&D back then.
Right. I look at it as the early chapters are what you should read in order just to get the basics of the game. And then the rest of the book is look it up as you need it. That's the way I've always seen it, especially for these core books, but it depends on the type of book. A starter game is more about teaching you the product from beginning to end. And we did a bunch of those. Jeff worked with me on a bunch of the fast play and the starter sets that we did during that period of time. If you get a book like an adventure, you want to create a layout and a readability that you can handle each chunk that you're playing at a time. At least that's the way I would approach adventure layout. So it all depends on the type of book you're trying to produce.
Yeah.
And do you think there's ways that the presentation of the text can aid in the understanding of it?
Well, there's certainly there's branches of science devoted to that, including in computer stuff. UI development is all about using what I'm seeing to help inform what I'm getting out of it. Our challenge, of course, is it's mostly words, right? And we do a lot of them in these big books. So trying to make a flow of information that's not going to burn out your eyes is always a good
big
thing.
blocks of text, large paragraphs. That tends to be a bad thing. The basically breaking up sections with section headings basically not only helps give the reader a break in taking in all this text, but also puts a memory, a bookmark in there. Okay, where was that rule? Oh, this rule was on this page, and I seem to remember there's an illo across the page for it. Okay, that helps me direct me to, so when I have to find the information, I can do so easily.
Also, the use of iconic characters, right? Like you don't necessarily have to just illustrate that iconic character where you talk about that character type, but that character can appear in art elsewhere in the book. It creates a bit of a through line. You see the character being used in examples and whatnot, and all of that creates sort of a narrative flow to the book. And anchor points, as Jeff was saying, that tie your memory to a specific point in the book, that sort of thing, and context for examples
also,
and rules and things like
Charles
that.
Says it creates a continuity. If you create the iconics and then utilize them later in illustrations, it basically says, yes, we're all part of a cohesive whole.
I think another interesting challenge is the order in which you present game rules, especially for making a character, let's say, right? Because they're making a character both for a game and based on a concept they have, but maybe they haven't been introduced to the elements of the game. So how do they make those decisions? And different steps of the character process kind of all work together in some way, but you do have to present them in an order. So did you find that to be a challenge, or were you pretty much using the science that had been developed before around this?
I mean, I spent a lot of time in these years with each of the new products developing that whole approach. And we even took that into 4th edition later, right? So every iteration got better. Back here at this point, I mean, the first big innovation to me was just the utilizing a core mechanic. That meant I could explain the game very quickly. Roll a d20, get high, you succeed, right? Mm-hmm. That's the core concept of the d20 system. And so I didn't have to go into long explanations of, to use, I call the earlier editions of D&D lovable Frankenstein monsters, because whenever they needed a new rule, they invented it and plugged it in. So sometimes you rolled high, sometimes you rolled low, and that made it tough to explain how to play the game. So the core mechanic idea, which for me comes from my time at West End, and then I did it with Alternity and then into the D20 system. Get that out of the way, and then I can start talking to you about what's important to the player, which is the character. And then, you have to explain what makes up a character, his abilities scores, and then any class-dependent features that we've added on top of that. So this was like the 3rd time we had done that for D20 for the D20 system. I think it's better than the previous because we iterate and learn, but probably not as good as we've gotten to even today with the 5th edition stuff, which is even streamlined and easier to digest.
And let's not forget, we also had Call of Cthulhu and Wheel of Time in there too. So really, in a way, it was our 5th iteration by that time.
Did they come out first?
I think that they did. Yeah, I mean, so I was certainly working on Wheel of Time and Call of Cthulhu before Modern.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
In any event, we were doing it a lot, and each time we did it, we got a little. Yeah. We tightened the screws a little better.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the wonderful things about the whole game design world is everyone is always building on each other's ideas, taking inspiration from new elements that people introduce, refining them. That whole process, I think, is wonderful. One of the things that I wanted to do this discussion for is to just show how, year after year and game after game, designs get refined, new ideas are introduced. but also they all have deep roots, right? Like those iconic characters, you see them develop over time as an idea until it really gets refined.
I used to tell my team all the time, you got to look at what came before for a couple of reasons. A, we don't want to copy unless we're doing it on purpose. We don't want to make the same mistake unless we're doing it on purpose. And we want to learn, we want to take inspiration, and learn from what somebody else did before us. So we had a library of games in the company, and we pulled them out all the time. Like Jeff said, we would pull out Thunder Road just to get an idea of how does a chase work in a game, right? So, and that we didn't copy it, but it inspired us to create something of our own.
Right. So, I always say that game design is a conversation. And this was really good, and this is how we're going to make it better. Or we didn't care for this. This is how we're going to fix it. The basic. So as we go forward, this is one point of time, and we've built on everything that's come forward, and the future will build upon that.
Yeah, and I think one of the visual elements of the game that's really striking is the way that the cover is composed and the way it uses characters. Can anyone speak to the process that went into that, or just the inspiration for it?
Basically, what I really liked about the cover was the fact it was character-based. It basically had 3 characters. They didn't all belong to the same exact genre. They basically could all come together, and it was a very simple, striking image with that central black bar down the center. It became sort of like a hallmark for that type of games. That silverish colored cover, gray cover gave us a modern vibe. Plus, we had the characters and we focused on them. I know, Bill, do you know how that came together in the first place?
Like all of those things, I would talk with the art director. We would talk about ways to approach it. We'd do an art order of some sort. But I think it was Rob who really wanted to, I guess simplistic is the word. He wanted to get right to the core of what we had. And I'll throw it out there again. We didn't use the term at the time, but we also went for a very diverse set of characters, right? And I always want to make sure that we have a strong female as part of the cover. And as Jeff said, we've got the guy on the right is either from a crime movie or a super spy. The guy in the middle is obviously a vampire or a demon slayer. And the one on the left, the woman is some kind of either martial arts Hong Kong action movie or something along those lines. And that summed up what we were trying to do right from the beginning.
One thing I had forgotten is that the Shadow Chaser in the center, the Monster Hunter, has on his jacket a patch of a gray patch with a black dragon on it. And I actually came across, we had those patches made.
Yep.
That was a giveaway. I
still have one
at
somewhere.
Conventions. And I came across it the other day and I said, oh, now I remember what this is. So.
Forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. I think if I remember correctly, because I remember Rob showing the team, the printouts, and color laser prints for all the different pitches. But the problem that Bill and Rob were working on together was how to communicate the breadth of this game, right? Because if you take the classic approach of showing a scene, then you peg it to a specific thing, whether that's going to be urban arcana or post-apocalyptic or science fiction or superheroes or whatever. And I think that we wanted to talk about how broad this game was, how you could use it for anything.
It also gave us an opportunity to break away from the look of traditional 3rd edition books, which all looked like books, which worked out very well within the fantasy genre, but had the challenge translating into a modern era where we're having a number of different genres. So it basically set us apart from the other rule books we had done.
Yeah, and I think the original goal of D20 Modern was to be a tool chest for you to build whatever game you wanted to make. And this cover was our best idea for getting that across.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I think it's always an interesting challenge when you're trying to send a message with the art and describe. And as you were describing the variety of the characters, and that was also the core of your class design as well. So you really showing off in a way the design elements of the game through the use of art that you might not pick up initially, but definitely that synergy is there and hopefully gets felt.
And I think it also was something, it was a striking departure from other books of the time. So it was going to stand out on the shelf, or at least that was our hope.
Yeah, and you have a powerful design when other people in the d20 space start copying it. That was a big thing with third edition, right? Suddenly everybody's got bespoke looking book designs, whether it made sense or not. And I think D20 Modern also had a number of other designers kind of follow some of the inspiration of that, and so you saw similar elements following its release.
I was not allowed in the room. They videotaped it and then chained me to a chair and made me watch the videotape as I'm starting to go, yes, okay, you're doing that right. You're doing that. Oh my God, I don't know, that's wrong. Okay, did we explain it wrong or are they just dumb? Okay, we can get past that.